Hey folks, Steve here with another Dark Valley video. We're going to be looking at turn 38 today, or in this video. One way, the other way to say it. This is a mud turn, so that's going to be some impact on the movement capability of units. But actually worse off for the Axis than the Soviets, as it turns out, on the weather effects chart. Yeah, interesting stuff. Okay, so, yeah, we're going to be working through this turn, and the Axis is going to be back to their typical crappy initiative chit recipe, but the Soviets don't have a great one either, really, so we're going to have to see if we experience another move, counter move. I think the more the game goes on and we get these cases of move, counter move, it's like, I don't know. I was trying to work it out. If I figure there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, 7 or 8 turns left. I guess there's 7 turns left, if I count right. There is the possibility that, like, for each of those 7 turns, the Axis gets to move and the Soviets move and the Axis counter moves. I mean, that could happen all 7 turns, I think. And if it does, then the Axis wins, and I am worried that's a pain point in the system here, and I just don't know. I don't know whether or not I'm doing something wrong, or what. That's something I would like some input from Ted, if possible, on, just to try to understand, what else can be happening here. Maybe I'm just picking move first too often, and I really need to be trying to do something else. But in this situation here, the Soviets are going to have to pick move first. That's their only real choice that they can make that will work. The other thing I guess they could do is they could do Stavka and move, a couple units around, I guess, or just have Stavka go first and then leave it to the cup, and then that could force a situation where the Axis move gets drawn first. Maybe that's what I need to do. Maybe moving first is creating the situation. I don't know. But this is another thing. There's like, man, I might have to move first just to have a chance of hitting them to begin with. So I don't know. There's got to be something here I need to think about better. And maybe last turn I should have done combat first. I mean, maybe that's really, at the end of the day, what should have happened. I would have only been able to really attack up around here and maybe a little tiny bit down here. And maybe that's just what I should have done. I don't know. Anyway, stuff to ponder, stuff to think about. I do want to show very quickly, end of last video, we had a case where a supply depot was stuck in these Zocs. I looked at the rules. Apparently, when supply is checked, is sort of like when a unit runs into them, they can be moved back. They have to be moved back to an in-supply rail hex, and because Romania's got the whole, perpetually no supply situation, I guess, I had to send it all the way back here. Again, I'll still say I'm a little confused by, if the intention is to say that all Axis units are out of supply, until they can get out of Romania and get a logistics check, right? They're just out of supply perpetually down here. That just seems really odd, and I don't think the rules really clarify that that's the intention, and I know Ted had mentioned that's how we're supposed to do it, because I had thought, well, okay, they're out of supply, but if you check logistics, you could trace back here, right? So maybe that's representing Romanians cutting rail lines over here. I don't know. But I've got the little markers here just to denote that, yeah, these guys are all out of supply still. So, yeah, that's what we're looking at here. We'll probably need to have movement go first. Now, in terms of reinforcements this turn, there's really not much. We do have the Axis get their 2nd Panzer back. That was taken off the board in a previous turn. And we're probably going to put this guy in the north just to help the pullback, to save units getting past Riga and the river line up in the north. Up here. Yeah, up here, it's not quite on camera. And then we have this. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see that. It's like a Polish Panzer division, but it's a pretty weak one. It doesn't have a Zoc. It is a two-step unit. So we've got this guy, and we're going to throw him somewhere. Now, I'm not sure if he represents another unit that I need to take off the board. I'll have to go look, see if maybe this is replacing a Panzer Grenadier or something, but I think it just comes in. The map box says that there's a withdrawal here for the Axis, but in the rulebook there's no withdrawal listed, so I'm wondering if that's what it's related to, is this Polish unit that's coming in is going to replace a Polish. Well, I guess it says I'm saying Polish. It's just POL, so that could be anything. I guess police. I don't know. It just might be getting that wrong. So I'll have to double check, make sure there's not a unit that this is supposed to be replacing. That should be a pretty straightforward thing to do. And then, yeah, we're gonna get no replacements for the Axis. We are out of replacements. I took the emergency replacements. Now there's nothing else left coming for the rest of the game, so the Axis don't have much, but the Soviets are going to top off their units. I don't even think, honestly, because of last turn's situation, I don't think there's anything to even replace, and we can't bank replacement points. There's one unit, one or two units that can be pumped up to full strength. There's an infantry army there, and that's about it. So for the Soviets, I mean, this is working out great. They are able to apply all of their pressure here, and we'll probably even be able to be making attacks that we ordinarily wouldn't even try now, because whatever damage we do to the Axis, assuming we actually get to fight them, they'll never be able to replace it. So as soon as we start busting through in the right places, the game's going to shift very quickly, I hope. So we'll look at placing these guys. We'll look at the replacements as we can here, and then I'll take care of the strategic movement type stuff. Should be pretty straightforward. And then we will be back, take a look at the action phase. So relatively swift intro here compared to the last one. We'll see you in just a second. Okay, here's the chit recipe for the turn. The Axis still has modal. Now, I couldn't tell, based on the wording of the rules, if the Axis, if they don't use this chit in 1944, do they get it in 1945? I don't know. It doesn't really say. It sounds like maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. It doesn't say about 1945, so I have to assume that I have to use it in 1944. So, and there's only a couple of turns left, so I think I'm going to end up using modal either this turn or next turn, or I guess the very last turn of 1944. But it is there, and it provides the Axis the ability to do something. They've got a Panzer activation. I chose the second, and I put the second up here with the intention that I'm going to use that extra activation to just pull them back. At this point, there is not a real great point in holding that space beyond the river line of Riga. What river is that? The Vina River. So I'm going to try to use some extra activations just to keep pulling those guys back. And if they can shorten the line at Riga, that'd be cool. If we need to pull back, hell, I mean, if we've got to pull back to Memel, we'll do that too. Because at this point, the more units we save and that we get in a better situation, maybe that's what we need to do. I don't know. Kind of tough to say how we want to proceed from here. It could be we don't pull back at all and we continue to do the one hex shuffle, as I'm calling it, but we'll see how it goes. And then the Axis are back to having their just move in combat chits, so they don't have the flexibility to pick. It's whatever comes up they have to take, which should help the Soviets catch them potentially. They have Stavka and then their move or combat, so whatever comes up they can pick, at least on the first chit. And the Soviets have initiatives. We need to decide, Do we move? Do we not move? The only thing about it, I guess, is that if we do Stavka, that has the potential for the Soviet combat jets to come up. Well, I guess that's not true. We would get to pick, right? I'm trying to like logic my way through this, right? If either of these comes up, if we put Stavka first and we just use it as a spacer, like a tool, a spacer to just put the chaos in, that would reasonably provide us the ability to move, but maybe Axis chits have come out first. That's probably what we would want to have happen. I don't know. I've got to think about this. I do have to think about this. So a couple of things, I guess, before I take myself off camera and make that determination. What's interesting is this actually is the last turn of Operation Bagration if you were just playing the scenario by itself. And so the way the Operation Bagration victory conditions are, the Axis wins if at the end of turn 38, which... Alright, my camera goofed up. I'm not sure where I lost you. So, yeah, we've got to decide as the Soviets what we want our chit to be. I'm not sure what that's going to be yet. Again, if we do Stavka, that gives us an opportunity for Axis chits to come out first, and then we can come in with the Soviets later, and maybe that would work better. I don't know. Just something to point out with Bagration, Operation Bagration, this would be the last turn if we were just playing this scenario. We're going to play through to the end. If we were just playing that scenario, the Axis wins if they have 13 or more victory points. As it stands right now, I think they have 15. I'll just do a quick double check of the numbers. So 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15. Yep. So basically, if we're playing this just as the scenario, the Soviets would be trying to grab 2 more victory points by the end of the turn. I guess they would need 3, because if the Axis is at 15, we need to reduce them down to 12. And are there 3 victory points in range to take? Not really. If we were into Silesia, that'd be fine. We could maybe pick up Warsaw and Vilnius. Riga, probably not. So I don't know. If we were just playing this as the Bagration scenario, I would be chalking this up to an Axis victory. Some of that just due, I think, to some turns in this scenario time frame where the chits just didn't come out well enough that the Soviets could create a good breakthrough opportunity, and they've yet to be able to do that, other than the goodness they've been able to achieve in Romania. So, looking like an Axis victory from that perspective for just a Bagration scenario, but obviously I've been playing like I was going to play to the end, which changes your methodology a little bit, because you're not playing with end of the world problems, right? If I know it's going to end on turn 38, I'm going to do things that would leave me in a worse off shape in turns 39, 40, 41, and so on. But I'm going to play for turn 38 because that's when the scenario ends. Well, I hope I wasn't thinking in that format. I was thinking we're playing at turn 44. I need to be able to make good, consistent progress, not big gambles to try to grab just the right number before the end of the scenario. So I won't say I'm doing bad as the Soviets here. I think we just need to get the right moment needs to happen here. Yeah. Yeah, I need to decide what to do here. Now, what I could do is, I could, well, I've already done my rail movement. I could redo my rail movement a little bit and put some units in Stavka and do Stavka first, but I think just with the situation as is, we'll let one more turn go of moving first, and if we get burned again, then we'll change it up. I'm really deathly afraid we're going to get burned again, but the Axis can't pick what they want, so they could very well draw combat and not be able to do much with it or do very little, and then we may be able to counterattack or to actually attack as the Soviets, I should say. So we're going to do movement as the Soviets as the first chit, and then we'll come back. I've got to clean off some of these activation chits up here. And we've got logistics. I didn't put that in the recipe list, but always logistics. So we'll do that movement, and we'll come back, and we'll see what the world is looking like. Okay, so Soviet movement is complete, and there's a little bit of just trying to get everybody where they need to be, and we're pressing in towards Warsaw, which is nice, but even our line in some places, the Soviets, is a little thin, but I think the main thing is the Axis just doesn't have the power to really counterattack somewhere and have it be meaningfully useful. So we're going to continue to push that. You can see, still a lot of forces lined up here, hoping to kind of break through this way, still aiming towards Berlin, and all the other victory points aside, a lot of strength up here to try to cut here, and otherwise the pressure out and around. Still working our way through Romania. Because of the mud this turn, we couldn't get quite as far as we would have wanted to, but assuming we get combat ability here, we're going to start to rip through these guys, and we'll be into Hungary proper very shortly, as we work our way sort of around the Carpathians and need to ensure that we have rail line access for supply, but so far so good. Yeah, it's still gonna be a challenge the whole way through. But again, the main thing that I'm thinking about is whatever damage we do from here on out to the end of the game cannot be replaced. So if we can get combat going this turn, we could see a general offensive across the entire line that could leave the Axis in tatters, and that's really what we want to see happen here. So I'm gonna go to the cup, and we will see what we get. And we get the Soviet activation marker. So, very important. We're going to end up taking that and doing all the damage we need to do. So I'm going to set up, make sure our chits are set up appropriately here at the top of the track, and we're going to conduct combat. So this is good. This is the ideal situation. I was going to say, if it had come up as anything else, I guess I would have been irritated because the Axis could slip away again. But this is just what we need. So we're probably going to knock these guys out. They're out of supply, and that will probably give the bonus for the Soviets enough just to knock the rest of these guys clear out. Because a lot of them are just one-step units, and then we'll be pushing again into Hungary, and that will be an advantage. And then all along the line elsewhere, we should see plenty of combats that do plenty of damage and put us on the right track to victory here. So, and I don't think it. I can focus attacks in certain spots to try to create breakthroughs. I'm at this point just kind of tempted to do general attacks all across the line, just shatter these guys, take out steps, do whatever it takes to create a position where they can't save themselves any longer because they're out of steps to cover the hex. That's what I'm thinking I want to try to do. Even with the screening forces the Axis have, soon enough it won't matter. They'll be too depleted to make it proper defense. So I'm going to take care of the Soviet combat off camera, and we'll come back. Okay, so here we are after Soviet combats. Now, I was saying, hey, general offensive across the entire line, but, in a lot of cases, I could barely get 1-to-1 odds or 2-to-1 odds, and that just wasn't going to work for attacks anyway, because it was just likely going to receive AL results or retreats, which, in some ways, I don't necessarily want retreats in certain spaces. I want to create potential to crunch and capture some guys and knock them out to create bigger holes. So I did what I could. In the north, we just have cleared out a little bit of some of the hexes around. You can see for some guys back. I've got a hex on Vilnius, and I'm going to potentially have some other hexes on Vilnius if I can get them through. I suspect the Axis will just try to pull back around, but I'm at least forcing that situation. So we're getting there. I mean, if I can pack enough combat factors next to Vilnius, I could try a 1 hex to 1 hex assault and just try to get them to retreat out of it and capture it. That would be useful. Down through here, there wasn't much I could do, but you can start to see in this critical sector, I forced them back a little bit, so I'm pushing up towards Warsaw. I've pushed through here. We've eliminated some units. The massed artillery. So I lost. My camera's screwing up a lot lately. I don't know why that is. I don't know if I'm talking too fast and it can't record it. I don't know. But again, and just I'll rewind a little bit here. We're getting into Vilnius territory here. Maybe starting to create some pincer here that the Axis will need to retreat out of. Down below, we're forcing out the Axis. Our massed artillery have banged these guys up pretty good. They're going to have a hard time covering the line here, and they're in really rough shape, and we have a lot of combat factors there. So we're not yet able to just run away into Silesia with it yet, but we're certainly battering down the door, and there's not much more that they can do. The Axis now might have to rethink the units near Buda and rail them up to Silesia potentially to slow them down. Down here, not a whole lot happened. We pinged a couple units for some BL1s, but down here in Romania, we did indeed clear Romania out. There's one 1-4 unit here in the mountains that's out of supply that I couldn't quite get an attack on because I needed the units attacking other places. Though you can see they're a little injured there, but they're just going to get beefed back up here in the in between phases of the turn. But from here on out, all the activations are pretty much Axis. I do have Stavka, but I don't really have, well, yeah, with the Zoc coverage that exists, I don't know that I have a lot of great places I could go with a Stavka activation yet, so maybe we wait and see what the Axis does, and then we can play Stavka. I did end up fixing my rail movement a little bit, where I put a guard tank army and a tank corps in the reserve for the Stavka use. But it's going to be hard to figure out where they can really leap out of and support. Maybe they go towards Vilnius. That would be one potential area, but their issues of Zocs, and I think that's what is going to be our issue here. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how it goes. So I'm going to go to the cup now, and we'll look at what happens here from the Axis perspective. And we pull Axis combat. So I don't know that there's going to be much the Axis wants to do for combat. They've had to use up all their air in supporting certain defense combats. Their assault guns won't do a whole lot of extra good. We could maybe look at a couple of spoiling attacks somewhere along the line, but I'm not sure there's much ability to really do that. So I'm gonna take us off camera. I'm gonna see if there's any combats, and then we'll come back. Just at this point, the Axis wants their movement to come up, and they are gonna really be driving hard to retreat out of the north, because at this point the south is in pretty bad shape. That they need to do something about it. So we'll be back. Okay, so in looking at Axis combats, we're not going to do any. What's funny, and this is how a lot of war games work, right? You work out the numbers, and you figure out how many combat factors does it take to attack another combat, stack of combat factors, and get the right ratio. That your typical 2 German infantry corps have attacking combat factors of 8, and that is just 1-to-1 odds on the chart to a Soviet army with 5 combat factors. So in a lot of places, like here along this line, I can't even with multiple units get enough combat factors that it's worth rolling, because all I'm going to really get is, at best, a retreat, which the Soviets don't care about, or a BL-1, which the Soviets would probably really like. So at this point, it's funny looking at the game and just seeing the breadth of it, right? The first half of the game involves the Soviets being on retreat and basically doing their best to retreat in good order and maybe do their own spoiling attacks, with the Axis on the offense. The middle of the game, around Case Blue through Kursk, is opportunity for both sides to kind of be trying to do that, for jockeying for better board position. And then the later part of the game is the reverse, right? The Soviets are attacking, the Axis is trying to retreat, and if feasible, doing spoiling counterattacks. And it works out well for me being a solo player, because I'm just sitting here doing it. I get to be the attacker whenever the attacker's attacking, right? Which is all the time, so I'm having fun. It'd be interesting to see what this looks like as an opposed game, because as the Axis, right, like your action on your turn is just retreating, basically. But it's the decisions, and what makes you a good defensive player is having to decide what units will go where, when to play time, space for time, and where to get your guys on lines that are more defensible. And I think as the defenders in this game, either the Soviets or the Axis, have done an okay job of it, really. But I do think, and as I keep playing, the thing that is in my mind the whole time I've been playing this game is that the onus, or the challenge, really is for the attacking player. And you would think that's the way it should be, right? Attacking is always harder in warfare. And it really is tough. To do what you need to do to win as the attacker, you really have to be able to do a lot. You have to be able to knock a lot of units out or away, or surround them, or what have you. And I'm not sure I'm a very good player at the game. That's probably the other thing. Is I'm either playing too loosely, or I'm really not evaluating just on every given moment the very best move, the optimal move every time. I'm probably missing some opportunities for that, and that may be causing my attacking part of my brain to just not be making the progress that I could be. And I'd be interested to know how other folks see the game on that, because I do think it's a good game. I'm watching out for, what, as I get to the end of the game, what things could I have done better, what things were weaknesses that I feel maybe weren't my own, maybe are in the system. But so far, like I said, it's been plenty fun. I just want to figure out, how will this stack up against other games of a similar type, right? What things to watch out for? The one hex retreat dance that we're doing with the chit pools. What can be done to mitigate that? That's just stuff all I'm thinking about as I'm reaching the end. Anyway, the Axis aren't attacking, so I'm going to pull the next chit. Now, I guess the Axis has the rest of the actions, so it doesn't really matter, I don't know who has primacy of if modal or the Soviets can play, the Axis can play modal or the Soviets can play Stavka. I'm not sure who has primacy. I think the Dark Sands was clear on who has primacy, on who gets to say who's doing what. I don't know if the rules of the Dark Valley are as explicit. I do see a situation where I may need to use modal now. And in fact, yes, I think at this point I have to use modal. I have to do it to activate the 4th Panzer guys over here, and I need to fix this. This is bad news, very bad news. Next turn, we would see, if I look, yes, next turn would see units into Krakow, Upper Silesia. We would, yeah, it's going to be real bad. So I think, well, no. Never mind. We still have Axis movement, and we don't need to use modal yet. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to let the chits come out. So let's just see. Let's see what we can get. And we get 2nd Panzer. So we'll let 2nd Panzer activation go. Stavka will hold yet for now, and we'll see. Thing is, even if I put Stavka in, say, like here, and had them move out, there's enough Zocs still right here that they can't squeeze through and get over there. It would be on the next move. So we're going to have 2nd Panzer move. We're going to pull back as much as possible, and then we'll let the rest of the movements come in, and we'll go from there. So take myself off camera. 2nd Panzer's up here, so we'll pull back as many units as are in range. Unfortunately, I would have liked it to have been moved so that I could have positioned the HQ better and then pulled back, but I can still pull some of these guys back, and we'll wait for the general move at that point. So, all right, anyway, I'm going to stop talking. We'll take care of the 2nd Panzer activation, and then we'll come back and see what comes next. Okay, so that was a pretty quick move. You can see I just sort of pulled guys back. The HQ wasn't as positioned. Again, I would have liked moved before that Panzer activation, but we pulled some guys back. Starting to get them behind the Dvina River for better defense there, so that'll be useful. We're going to go to the cup. There's only a couple chits left. Now, doesn't make sense to do... doesn't make sense to do Stavka here. Could we get anywhere with Stavka? Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The mud is our problem. Yeah, see, the mud really is our problem, but... Well, let's see here. 7, 11. I could get... Yeah, I don't know. Brest-Litovsk is not a city, so I couldn't put the units there. I guess we'll hold off on Stavka for now. We'll see what shapes up here. So we're going to pull the next chit. It is Axis move. So the only chit that'll be left in the cup is logistics, and so we'll probably do Stavka after the Axis move, just in case there's anything we could do that could potentially change the supply situation. Though I don't think there'll be much there worthwhile to worry about. So Axis movement, I can tell you right now, we're going to continue to pull back behind the river line and use Riga as an anchor point. We'll hold here. We'll probably move back a little bit. Yeah, we're going to have to move back as much as possible. It's going to be a funny move here. There's only so many options that the Axis can take. I think what these guys in the mountains are going to have to do is sort of pull back and create some sort of defensive line here. And then these guys, honestly, are going to have to get railed up to Silesia. I thought they were going to be a strong bulwark down there in Buda. But now that the Soviet attacks in that center lane that I've been focused on since we started this scenario is now breaking through, we need to get guys up there and protect. We need to protect that region. And I think we can delay. I think there's enough hexes down here that those units can be delayed. So maybe it was a mistake to put them down there. But hindsight's 20/20, I guess, and the Soviets are doing what they can to sweep up through, and maybe just based on time they won't be able to get to even Prague by the time it matters. But we'll see. The mud is certainly slowing some things down, and that's actually going to be a concern even for the Axis here. Their ability to pull back with the mud is going to be hampered, so a lot of those infantry units are only going to be able to move 3 movement points. It will be hard for them to totally disengage their position. And you can almost see, pushing here, pushing there. We would possibly have been able to capture some of those guys in one big pocket, but I don't think that's going to be feasible at this point. I think the Axis are going to be able to sneak their way out of that one, which, doesn't do them a whole lot of, you can have a whole lot of guys up here. It doesn't help you if these, this is starting to open up and we rush through, right? That, we'll be cutting all those guys out of supply if we start cutting a couple of these rail lines. I should mention, I forgot to mention, I did rail some airborne up here in range of the Stavka, so I can look at using those guys. I just haven't figured out the right thing to do there to make it doable. What I think it really comes down to is hitting the right rail lines, I guess, is going to be the important thing. And if we can do that, and there's a couple of select rail spots that I could potentially get them moved into, that could help a lot. So we'll see. I'm not sure. We'll have to see. Anywho, I'm going to do the axis movement, and when we come back, the board should look kind of different in terms of the axis defensive positioning. So we'll be right back. Okay, here's the axis movement complete. You can see we're starting to get, I couldn't quite get everybody over the river, but we're starting to pull out of there. There's maybe some exposed guys here, but I had to emergency withdrawal them due to the Zocs in the region. Still hoping to use Vilnius as maybe a holding line there. And just everywhere else we've started, again, pull back. Things are still, we've covered now our bases a little bit, but that line is awfully thin. But each hex has a decent number of combat factors. Now there's a weak point right here that I was thinking, okay, now that's where you do Stavka, right? You bring in the 18 combat factors that I have in 18 combat factors. And you attack there, right? 18 to 4, that's 4 to 1 odds, that's pretty good. Except that the Axis could use their assault marker on that activation, and they would have 8. 18 to 8 is only 2 to 1 odds, and 2 to 1 odds is not actually not very good. It's probably not going to do anything for us. 2 to 1 is sort of that spot where only if we're very lucky will we actually get a roll that would be beneficial. We're very likely to get an AO1. So I might try it, but I really don't think it's going to do much for us, unfortunately. Now down below you can see we started to pull back out of the mountains a little bit, just because we wouldn't necessarily have had to do that because the defense is better in the mountains, but we were going to get outmaneuvered down in the south, so we're starting to pull back a little bit. Getting out of the mountains takes time due to the high movement costs, so just starting to pull back, and then we'll start to retreat back towards Buda. And like I said, when it comes to the next turn's rail movement, we're probably going to get these guys. Try to get as many of them out as we can, depending on the die roll for Axis rail movement. If we can't move all of them, we'll leave one guy behind or something, and he'll help at least protect the oil resource that the Axis will need to keep their air guys going. So I guess this is the opportunity here. We're going to do Stavka. We're going to get the guys in Stavka. They're going to reinforce into Lvov, and then they're going to move, let's see, 1, 2, 3, yeah, they've got plenty. They're going to move here. They're going to attack that lone mechanized division here, so 18 to 4. We don't have any air left as the Soviets. They have no other resources, so it's just 18 to 4. The Axis can use their assault guns. That's not going to focus for a +4 on defense. So that's an 8. So 18 to 8 is 2 to 1 odds. We're going to roll it, and I think now that the cup is empty, and it's just going to be logistics, and everybody that can be, everyone's in supply except for one unit in Romania. I'll just roll this on camera, and you guys will see what the results are. I'll just do it over here. And we rolled a 1. Alright. There you go. Alright, 2 to 1. That's an AL1. And that means that our my cup's falling all over the place. That our guard tank army takes a step loss, and that's it. Well, that could have gone better. We would have been hoping for a 6. We rolled a 1. So, bummer. That's a bummer. The way the cookie crumbles. Logistics would get pulled next, and like I said, everybody's in supply except for there's one poor lonely Axis unit left in Romania. He is out of supply by being in Romania. Um, and at this point, I'm just going to let him sit there in the mountains and just be an obstacle to slow the Soviets down. They're going to have to deal with them somehow, and we'll let that occur next turn just to be a delaying force. So far so good, I guess. As the Axis, I mean, we're really, we're still maintaining a coherent line of sorts. And the important thing now is just to get, we're heavily weighted in the north. We need to fix that. We need to try to get some more guys in the south. And we have limited rail capability to do that. But the Soviets are starting to run out of time. Again, if we were using the Bagration victory rules for the scenario, the Soviets would lose here. They didn't take enough victory spaces from the Axis. But again, we weren't necessarily playing to that immediate goal for that many turns. We just weren't trying for that necessarily. So I think we're okay. We're going to see things really change once these 4 victory points come off the board near Silesia. And I'm going to have to look at the Polish rules really quick. We are not within 2 hexes of Warsaw yet, but Soviet Polish units will be entering the game very shortly. Next turn probably, assuming we can get closer to Warsaw, and that will be some added combat factors. Will probably get them into Lvov, and then they'll join the fray. So making progress, but not quite where we need to be yet. So that'll do it here for turn 38. We will go into turn 39. In the next video, the Axis get like 1 little division as reinforcements, and that's the only thing they can add to the board, while the Soviets are going to top off most of their other units, and the struggle will continue. But again, each hit that the Axis takes now is permanent, and it's going to be about conservation of power for them on through the next several turns. So thanks for watching. If you are sticking with the whole series, thanks for doing so. We're in the late stages here. The end is in sight, and we'll see how it all shakes out. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have any thoughts on strategy or your experiences with the game that may be different than mine, comment as well. Would be interested to hear what people think. And we'll continue to be thinking about what comes next after the Dark Valley is complete. So until next time, guys, take care and keep on gaming.